So I'm gonna start preparing my egg-based pasta dough with the soft white flour. I'm going to mound my flour right onto the table, and I'm gonna add a little pinch of salt to that. I'm gonna create a well in the center of the flour by inserting my finger in the center, and it'll go opening up a nice wide space. I'm gonna crack 4 eggs into this. This is approximately 2.5 cups of flour. And I am going to start mixing the eggs into this well. I'm gonna prepare a mixture inside here that looks kind of like scrambled eggs. When I no longer see any separated parts of eggs, whites or yolks, I'm gonna start incorporating the flour from the sides of the well into the center. My goal at this stage in the preparation of pasta dough is to create a mixture that is not going to run all over the table if one of my walls were to fail. So in slowly inserting flour from the sides, I'm going to moisten it with my fork. When I have enough flour that my batter no longer runs, I can ditch my fork, set it aside, and I can start mixing this dough with my bench scraper. I'm going to start cutting in the flour into the liquid to combine it into a uniform mixture. I am going to keep cutting the flour into the moistening ingredients up to when I no longer see any loose flour on the table. This may take a few minutes, but you just kind of want to work thoroughly not to have any flour left over. If you have too much flour left on the table, your dough will be too soft, and then it will be very sticky when you try to roll it later on. So I'm just slowly incorporating all of it, making sure that I don't leave any straggler parts on the table, and I combine everything into the main mass in the center. So cut, 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 up to when I no longer feel much flour left on the table. Once I do not see any more flour, or very little of it, I can start combining the dough with my hands. I'm going to start the kneading process. Now, kneading brings the dough together and activates the gluten. Gluten is the protein that we find in flour, and it is activated by the water that we added through the eggs and the mechanical action. Now, why do we want to develop the gluten in pasta dough is because pasta dough has, when consumed, a very chewy texture. That's what we like out of pasta. And if we don't get the dough to be very springy, which means that the gluten is well activated, we won't get a chewy pasta dough. So I'm gonna start kneading by pressing on it and folding it over itself. And as I do that, I wanna make sure I incorporate everything that's on the table into a smooth dough. All the flour needs to be incorporated into this dough to create a smooth mixture. When most of the ingredients are incorporated, pasta dough tends to be very firm, and it almost feels like something went wrong. But you wanna have faith in Chef Simone and keep kneading, and all of a sudden, as the gluten activates and the dough becomes developed, the dough will soften up into something that's very well manageable just by hand. Now, could I do this in a machine? Certainly I could, but what is the tradition in that? Kneading the dough properly will take about 5 to 7 minutes of hard work. If you're not breaking a sweat, you're not doing it right. You want to fold it over itself multiple times to create layers upon layers inside this dough, which means chains and chains of gluten protein that are well activated for pasta dough that has a nice chewy texture once we eat it. Once my dough starts to come together, and I can see that by stretching the dough in itself, and I start to see stretch marks on the outside, it means that I'm getting close to the softening spot of the dough. Still a little bit more working. And the ideal texture of your dough when it's completed is a bouncy dough that's very, very elastic, and it will spring right back when poked with a finger. Once you have kneaded your dough for about 7 to 8 minutes, you will notice that your dough is going to be very smooth on the outside, just like this. And it starts trapping in a little bit of air because the gluten is very, very well active. And also you can see that when I poke the dough with my finger, the dough springs right back. When I have my dough well developed just like this, I'm going to set it aside and rest it for at least a half hour. Pasta dough is very, very elastic if used right away, and it won't be able to stretch it properly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a little bit of plastic wrap to make sure that my dough doesn't dry out, wrap it really well, and set it aside to rest for about 30 minutes. This can be done way ahead of time, about 2, 3, 4 hours if you have a long time to wait.